welcome to Chronicle Studios. I'm Nick Martin here along with Ryan Hoerger, and we're here to get you set for, recap what's been a crazy week in Duke basketball already and get you ready for what's going to be an even wilder finish. Ryan, can you kind of take us through what made this past weekend such a historic weekend in Duke basketball?
Yeah, obviously, Nick, Sunday afternoon in Madison Square Garden was another historic moment for Coach K. Picked up his 1,000th career win in dramatic fashion. 10-point comeback for the Blue Devils in the second half with a big run led by Quinn Cook and Tyus Jones to erase a 10-point deficit and pick up a really historic win. Obviously, there's something that's never been happened before in men's college basketball in Division I. So Coach K got that milestone, and it was really good for Duke, I think, to get that milestone out of the way. They got that win on their first attempt, their first crack at 1,000. They didn't mess around pretty much. They wanted to get it over with and just move on to conference play after taking a hiatus to play at St. John's, and they really focused on getting past it and getting through it so that there wouldn't be any more distractions that head into what's going to be a really, really big week for them. 2 straight road games at top 10 opponents.
Yeah, and they're going to kick things off Wednesday night. They're going to head into South Bend and take on, the number 8 ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Notre Dame has kind of pulled a 180 this year in terms of their success to last year. Last year they started off the year strong, 10-4. They beat Duke in the ACC opener at home, and then they just kind of bottomed out. They didn't have Jarian Grant, their leading scorer. He was out due to an academic-related suspension for the spring semester, and they finished 15 of 17, missed the NCAA tournament, were bounced from the ACC tournament in the first round by Wake Forest. But this year's just been, something completely different. They're 19-2. Their only losses have been against Providence in their 5th game of the season, and a tight thriller against UVA. So when you really look at it, the Fighting Irish and what Mike Brey has been able to do this season, it's going to be a tough test for them. But Ryan, why don't you take us through? Mike Brey is obviously a Coach K disciple, and everybody says Coach K preaches defense. But what has Mike Brey been able to do with the Fighting Irish offense?
Yeah, their offense is really impressive, Nick. They lead the nation in offensive efficiency. They're averaging 1.24 points per possession. That's really unheard of, I think. And they've got 4 players who average 13 points per game or more, and two more players that average 8 points per game or more. So they can really score all over the floor, Nick. They make 40% of the three-pointers, which is really astounding, and they shoot 52.1% from the field overall. And what's problematic for Duke is that Jarian Grant, like you mentioned, he's a great scorer, great distributor. He's willing to find his teammates. Pat Connaughton can knock down triples anytime he wants to, but having the three-point depth that they have in that three-point shooting from anywhere on the floor, it's really going to be problematic if Duke has to go zone again, because as we've seen, Duke's man-to-man has been struggling against ball screens. That's why they went zone against Louisville, Pittsburgh, and St. John's. And the problem with that, they got away with that because those teams don't shoot threes very well.
Yeah.
And they got open looks, they just didn't knock them down. If Notre Dame gets looks like that tomorrow night, on Wednesday night, they're going to make them pay. And it's just going to be a really tough game for the Blue Devil defense, and they really have to step up.
Yeah, and kind of take a step back and to, like I mentioned earlier, head coach Mike Brey, the job he's been able to do in the 15 years and counting at Notre Dame has been really impressive. He worked at Duke. He came out from DeMatha High School, which is actually where Jarian Grant went to high school in Maryland, and he came out from DeMatha. Coach K picked him up in 1987, and he's on the staff through 1995. During that time, he had probably one of the most amazing runs any first-time college basketball assistant coach could have. They go to 6 Final Fours. They win 2 national championships. He gets all this exposure to one of the most hyped and best 8-year runs in Duke history. And so then he makes the jump to Delaware. He racks up a decent winning percentage, and then Notre Dame picks him up in 2000. And this year, it's very clear that in talking to Nate James, the assistant coach for Duke basketball, it's very clear what Coach K has instilled, and you can see that on the court for Notre Dame. But Ryan, as much as we're making a deal out of Notre Dame, that's not even the toughest test for Duke this week. They've got a much, much more difficult task ahead of them Saturday.
Yeah, they're going up to Charlottesville, Virginia, to take on number 2 Virginia Saturday night in prime time on ESPN. And that's really going to be, if Notre Dame's a struggle on the defensive end for Duke, the game against the Cavaliers could be a struggle on the offensive end. Yeah. Virginia's defense is stifling. They give up 49.1 points per game. They've held 3 opponents to less than 30 points over 40 minutes. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And they really do it with their length, Nick. They've got their average height for a Virginia player is 6'6", and that's really going to clog up the middle, and it's going to affect passing lanes trying to get the ball into the post when you're out on the perimeter. And for Duke, that's going to be a huge test to go on the road. They fell there 2 years ago when they went up to John Paul Jones Arena, and it's really going to be interesting to see how Duke attempts to crack that stifling Virginia defense.
Yeah, well, with such a crazy week of basketball ahead of us, and such an historic weekend behind us, make sure to stay up to date. Follow us online at DukeChronicle.com, and as well as follow us on Twitter at Chronicle Sports at Duke Basketball. We'll be live from South Bend tomorrow night and Charlottesville this Saturday. So make sure you check in with us online. From Ryan Hoerger, I'm Nick Martin. Have a great night.